Hi everyone, very good evening. Welcome to Pune Writers Group. This session, a very exciting session. I'm really looking forward to it. Today we have with us Aswin Vijayan. Um, I'm sorry, I'll have to read out his bio because it's slightly long. Aswin Vijayan is an assistant professor at the Zamorin's Guruvayurappan College, Calicut, and has an MA in poetry from Seamus Heaney Center, Queen's University, Belfast. His poems have been published in the Yearbook of Indian Poetry in English 2020-21, Witness, the Red River Book of Poetry of Dissent, the Bombay Literary Magazine, and the Tangerine, among others. He was awarded the Toto Award for Creative Writing in 2022. He's also the managing editor at the writing collective, The Quarantine Train. And just a bottom line, he's a wonderful poet, a wonderful human being, and somebody who has a beautiful soul. So I'm very, very happy that he's agreed to join us today. Thank you, Ashwin. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Kinjal. It's as I was saying before we turned on the recordings. Like I've been hearing about Pune Writers Group for nearly 2 years now, and it's such a pleasure to be here and to interact with all of you. And I know a few of you already, and it's such a good feeling to talk to people whom you already know, and also excited to meet those whom I have not met before, whose ideas I have not heard from before. And I hope that you all got a chance to look through the poems that I shared with you, because I hope this is a platform where we all can talk a little bit about what we think about the poems that are being shared, and how do we read poems. Because as you already know, because you are serious enough writers, that's why you are here. And here in a session that talks about craft, you're here because you are serious writers who know for a fact that reading is the first step to, improve ourselves as writers. So I don't have to tell you this, but reading collectively, I have found out, reading as a group has helped me develop my craft a lot better, understand my craft a lot better. Because when you are reading together, when a lot of people are pitching in their ideas about what the poem is, and what the poem is doing, and what the poem is trying to do, what the poem is succeeding, where the poem is failing, when we have that sort of a collective community sort of discussion on poetry, I have found that it helps me understand the poems much better, and it helps me understand the craft itself better. And most of the time when I was being part of these sort of communications, I wasn't aware that it is improving my craft, but it inevitably ended up making me more self-aware that what am I trying to do when I try to sit down and write a poem. What am I trying to do? What am I looking for when I am sitting down to read a poem? These things became clearer and clearer as I started talking more about poetry with other people who talk poetry and who read poetry. So this is what I hope to do today: talk poetry, read poetry, and through that have like a few conversations about what these poets, most of these poets, you would have seen that most of these poets are poets who are still alive, who are still around, who are writing their poems contemporaneously. And these are the kind of voices that we hear around us. It's just one set of voices. There is a lot more experimental voices around us, but I am not interested in that per se in today's session, but I'm more interested in what is the scope of a poem, of a simple everyday poem. So Kinjal, if you could share the screen, shall we start with the first poem? And it would be a pleasure if someone can read the poem out for me. Anybody who would like to read The Orange?
May I?
Yes, please, Archana.
May I? Okay.
Yes, please, yes.
The Orange, Wendy Cope. At lunchtime, I bought a huge orange. The size of it made us all laugh. I peeled it and shared it with Robert and Dave. They got quarters and I had a half. And that orange, it made me so happy, as ordinary things often do. Just lately, the shopping, a walk in the park, this is peace and contentment. It's new. The rest of the day was quite easy. I did all the jobs on my list and enjoyed them and had some time over. I love you. I'm glad I exist. Thank you.
Thank you, Ashwan. Do we all agree that this is a poem?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
So what makes it a poem?
Is it the rhyme scheme?
Rhyme scheme helps. Yes, Shankar, absolutely, it helps. But that if we say rhyme scheme makes a poem, then it means that all poems must have rhyme scheme, right?
No, that's not what I was saying. I was saying that rhyme scheme is one of the things that can be a poem, but given modern poetry, it's not compulsory.
It's not compulsory. It's something we use as a tool. One of the many tools that we use. Yes.
At first glance, I think the structure of it.
Okay, the structures. Yeah, lines, right?
Lines, breaks,
lineation. Line and lineation. Yes.
4 lines per stanza.
Yeah. So it has a structure. It has a visible structure, that something that you can look at and say, oh, this is not an essay. I look at it and I won't think of it as an essay, because visually it looks like a poem, what we expect a poem to be. It has some sort of visual, some use of white space that makes us think that this is a poem. So what Shankar said and what Sumit said also overlaps, because the use of white space is what allows us to get to what Shankar said, the rhyme scheme. The rhyme scheme is made possible because we do not write from left to right. We are not writing from left till we hit the margin, which we do in prose. We don't really care about what the end word is in a line in a prose piece, because the whole sentence is what matters. It is not each individual line. So lineation is one of the fundamental things. The use of white space and that visual aspect of what poem looks like is quite important to us. So that is one aspect of it that makes the orange a poem. What else makes it a poem?
I would say it's the hidden structure behind it, the hidden leaps of imagination.
Yes.
So the metaphor of the orange carries over into the rest of the poem.
Yes. So there is a hidden structure. So there is something on the surface and there is something hidden as well. There is something, so there is a skeleton that is dressed up in the clothes. So yes, there is something that you see outside and then there is something inside as well. So, Archana, you were about to say something.
The way it moves, it has a certain rhythm. I obviously can't read it like an essay, or I can't read it like some prose thing, you know, the way it moves, the cadences, the highs and lows. I think that.
So yes, that's the aspect of sound. Shankar also, what Shankar also said, the rhyme scheme also depends on the sound of it. So there is a particular way in which language is being used. There is a particular way in which sound is being used. So we talked about sound, we talked about sense, we talked about sight. 3 things that are quite important. So all of this makes it a sort of a poem, what we understand as a poem. And can we go a little bit into the sense of the poem? What is this poem saying? When it talks about the orange, Mandakini said, the orange is a metaphor. What do we mean by that? What is a metaphor?
Sorry, can you repeat that question?
What is a metaphor? Metaphor.
Something that stands for something else, right?
Something that stands for something else, absolutely. So how does the metaphor of orange work here? What does the orange stand for here? Any takes?
I think the orange is a stand-in for participation of life, or of life itself, in terms of partaking. The orange is a metaphor for enjoying and taking part in the little pleasures of life.
Yeah, absolutely. That's lovely. The orange is a metaphor for life, right? I think that kind of is a very good way of looking at this poem, because it's the aspect of sharing the orange that kind of reveals something to the speaker of the poem. There is a speaker in this poem who is absolutely delighted by that one mere act. At lunchtime, I bought a huge orange. And that there is something there in that line. I bought a huge orange. So there is sound at play here. The hugeness of the orange is important, because that simple adjective says a lot to us about the orange. At lunchtime, I bought an orange. Is okay, you bought an orange, you ate an orange, but I bought a huge orange. There is something momentous about the orange. The hugeness of orange is not necessarily just the size of it, but there is the importance of it. The orange is huge. It is significant in many ways. The size of it made us all laugh.
I think, if I may say so, there's childlike delight and wonder in it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
There's this, and also the fact that you're peeling it. So there's the layers that come out.
Yeah.
Something nice and juicy and sweet coming out of it.
Yes.
So I just felt that there is a lot of wonder and childlike delight in this whole thing. The act of, and the fact that there's a dash there, she wants it to be celebrated, you know, she wants you to stop there and think of that orange, which is why I think that there is that dash there, you know, where you pause and you actually think and you participate in that moment where that orange has been bought.
Archana is saying something very significant about the way we think about lines here. So, most of you would already know this, because where we end the line is so significant, because you are allowing that last word to breathe. You are allowing that last word so much space. You are allowing it context. And when you pause at something like an orange and you are saying, see, look, this is important. This is the word that I want you to focus on. The poet has that power to direct the attention of the reader to that last word. So lineation is quite significant, and orange here is given that importance with that position at the end of the line, and that pause also adds an extra stress on that particular word. So as a tool, when we are talking about something, we can create suspense, we can create importance, we can reduce the importance of something by placing it differently in different parts of a line. So this is something significant. If you are placing it at the beginning of the line, it has a certain significance. If you are placing it at the end of the line, it has certain significance. So these are things that we can keep in mind when we are constructing our own little lines. But there is also that other aspect that Archana just talked to us about, the delight in seeing that orange, the size of the orange. The size of it made us all laugh. So there is a collective sense as well that made us all laugh. It didn't make me laugh. It made us all laugh. The orange, just because it was huge, it made us all laugh. There is something collective about it. I peeled it and shared it with Robert and Dave. So who is Robert and who is Dave? Does it matter?
I don't think so. I don't think it matters.
Okay.
It leaves us guessing, and it keeps us with the poem in that way, right?
Yeah.
It binds us to the poem.
Do you have a guess about who Robert and Dave could be? Any guesses who they are?
It could even be the family.
Someone,
Yeah, the family.
Maybe
Or even the
colleagues.
colleagues. Yeah, colleagues. Yeah, I
There's
always
something-
imagine them as colleagues, because
Yeah, it's something mundane about it, right?
Yeah.
The act and lunchtime, you know.
Yeah.
So it's either somebody you meet regularly, like
Yeah.
whoever it might be, your work or your
So
family.
when somebody close enough that you address them by their first names, Robert and Dave.
Correct. Correct.
This is someone, this is a speaker who is kind of making a note, writing to someone or texting someone or telling someone about the day that they had, right? And they are saying, oh, I shared it with Robert and Dave. So the person listening automatically knows who Robert and Dave is. It just so happens that we are overhearing what he or she is saying to the person that they are addressing, right? So Robert and Dave, I shared it with Robert and Dave, whom I imagine to be some colleagues that the speaker always talks about. They got quarters and I had a half. So obviously I bought the orange. So I had the half and the rest of the half I shared with Robert and Dave, which is quite a normal human thing to do. You have the bigger piece and you, even though you are sharing, you share the smaller pieces to the others. And that orange, it made me so happy, as ordinary things often do, just lately. What's happening here? Do you feel a shift happening?
Yeah, there's a definite leap, right? As
Yeah.
ordinary, because suddenly from the orange, he's gone to ordinary.
Orange to the ordinary, right? So orange is something specific. It is ordinary, yes, but it is also something very specific, something very solid, something everyday. But ordinariness is a quality. It's much more abstract quality. The everydayness of it. It is an abstract quality. So there is a leap that is being made from a very natural, general, everyday thing to a more significant universal feeling of ordinariness, as ordinary things often do, just lately. So the orange made me so happy. The particular made me so feel happy. Happiness is another abstract feeling. So why is it normal to keep the bigger slice? Because I am saying it is normal because it is just somebody who it's their lunch, right? Like it's the part of their lunch. So they are having the lunch, but they are sharing. So they share some of it. That's why I said it is a norm. So if you share lunch, if you bring lunch together and you're sharing it with colleagues, you usually have the bigger share of it. Still,
yeah, and they bought the orange, so it's fair enough.
yeah,
I think
they bought the orange, so I think it is a normal, but maybe it is not normal in certain other contexts. But just in the context of sharing lunch, I said it's a normal thing to have half of it and share the rest of the half with the others whom you're sharing lunch with. Maybe it is a commentary on our more selfish nature, but I think of it as much a simpler act of just having your share and then sharing the rest with others. Yeah, so as ordinary things often do, just lately ordinary things have started to make me feel happy. The shopping, walk in the park, this is peace and contentment. It's so what do you think is happening here? What is the significance of these lines? Just lately. What do you mean by that? Why is the just lately here? Why is it significant?
Well, obviously, she was not always feeling happy about ordinary things.
Yeah.
I'm saying she because it's Wendy Cope. I mean, I'm assuming it's a she.
Yeah.
And ordinary things obviously have only now started looking good to her. Earlier, she wasn't peaceful and contented. It's new. I mean, that's quite obvious that it's a new phase of her life, or she is, I mean, from the end, it says, okay, I love you. I'm glad I exist, which means that she has fallen in love or something and, enjoying the feeling, I would say.
So without saying anything particular, without saying anything like I have fallen in love, so now I have a new appreciation for things around me, she's able to say that I now have a new appreciation for things around me. So with just that phrase, just lately, it indicates that there was a situation when she was not appreciative of things like this. And it's new. The very brief statement, it's new, means the old way of doing things or the old way of looking at the world around her was quite different for her, that she probably resented things around her. There was some sort of resentment, some sort of sadness that was present in her life, which is not even being alluded to, but without saying that it is there, it is being hinted at, it is suggested at. So there is a new revelation, there is something new. The rest of the day was quite easy. The day is made easier by this act of sharing an orange. I did all the jobs on my list and enjoyed them and had some time over. So this is something you do regularly. Again, as I said, this last stanza kind of adds on to that tone of this being a speaker saying something to probably a beloved or probably a loved one, a family member, telling someone what happened in their life on that day, kind of like almost like a diary entry or a note entry or a message to a loved one. The rest of the day was quite easy. I like went about the day easily. I did all the jobs on my list. I did everything that I had to do and enjoyed them, which is probably doing everything on the list and enjoying them is something that they are also new to, again, something that they are finding, they had found difficult to do earlier, but now is finding easier and happier doing those things, enjoying as they do what they do. Had some time over and they had some time left over to herself or themselves. And she says, I love you. I am glad I exist. What do you make of the last lines? Does it follow from the lines before? Like, does it make sense to come to that line? Does it? What is the line talking to us about? What is the poet telling us in these lines?
So the last bit is like, it's showing that the day was like flowing quite comfortably and easily. There was a flow to it, like everything happened properly and I had time. I had enough time. I was like, not rushed or anything like that.
Yeah.
That is something that she's conveying there.
Yeah, absolutely. And with that sense of comfort, with that sense of having achieved something, concludes that I love you. I love you. Whoever is listening, it could be the readers, ourselves. Probably the speaker is addressing us. Probably the speaker is addressing someone else. But the speaker says, I love you. But what I am glad about is that I exist. Because my existence, in my reading of this line, my existence, the speaker's existence was somehow in question.
Yes, certain.
At some point, the speaker did not think that they would exist. And now they exist. And they are glad that they do. Because now that they exist, it's only because of their existence, they are able to enjoy the ordinary things, that be happy about ordinary things and enjoy doing the recent chores, the regular, usual chores. Yeah, did not want to live earlier. There was, like, it is suggested underneath, there is a suggestion that there was a point when they were not glad that they were existing, and their existence was in some ways threatened. And this is a point that something has changed. And I think one of the most crucial lines for me in this poem is, this is peace and contentment. It's new. This is peace and contentment. It is new. Why do I say that? Because it is a moment, an important moment, or a sort of a realization or a revelation, or what you call in poetry an epiphany. There is some sort of an epiphany, some sort of a realization. This is peace and contentment. To be able to enjoy ordinary things, to be happy with ordinary things, is peace and contentment. This realization, this is, in poetry we call this epiphany. Not every poem has to have an epiphany, but there is a moment of that sort of a realization or revelation in many of these poems. So we agree that this is a poem and there is something in the poem. And I like, for those who have managed to read this before the session, did any of you find it a difficult poem to read?
No.
Or to understand?
No.
Yeah.
I found it very
Yeah.
easy to read and it was very conversational. I mean,
Yeah.
if it had been written in prose, I mean, if it had not been written in a poem way, I would have taken it to be a piece of prose. I mean, it as comfortably flows as, 2 paragraphs, just normal paragraphs.
But we do agree that it is not prose, right? it has the conversational quality of a prose piece, but it still is not prose. That is what I would like to, that is the argument that I would like to make. That is the point that I would like to make. So what is poetry? Do you have any definitions of poetry that you have heard, something that you like, anything that you think is poetry? What makes a poem a poem? Or what is poetry?
I would say there are no rules in poetry
Yes.
as there are in prose, like the sentence structure, it should make sense, or there are a lot of, what is it called, literary freedom.
Yes. Yeah. Artistic freedom.
Yeah, in a poem.
Yeah. Of course. There are rules, yes, but there are no strict rules. There is some freedom to bend all the rules, yes. But like something that I would very much argue is that you cannot bend the rules if you don't know the rules. Learning the rules would be the first step to bend the rules. So there needs to be a sense of grammar. If you don't have to follow the rules of grammar, but if you don't know the rules of grammar, how can we bend the rules of grammar in a way that is actually, that makes sense? So to be able to use language freely in a poem, I think we need to know the rules of language, the rules, at least not all of them. We are never going to learn all the rules that govern the usage of a language as vast as English, but still to have a sense of it, to understand how others have done it, others have used it, others have misused it, then I think we would be in a better position to use it or misuse it.
I'm sorry, I don't know what makes it a poem as opposed to a prose other than the way it looks.
Yes.
It's 4 lines per stanza,
Yeah.
and it looks in a particular shape, equal shapes, basically each stanza almost. Beyond it, I don't know what makes it a poem as opposed to a prose.
See that is a question, that is something that I want to address, because thank you, Swati, for bringing that up, because see, that's what I want to bring your attention to. If this was, as Mala said, if this was a prose piece, right? If this was written as a prose, I am not going to sit here and talk to you about the positioning of orange at that particular point, right? I am thinking about the positioning of orange. I am thinking about the sound of huge and orange and laugh and half and do and new. I am thinking about these things because of how it is positioned, how it is placed. And that is what makes language in a poem more potent. How they are placed, where they are placed, because they are placed in positions that can reflect each other, that can play with each other. There is a play allowed. That is what allows us to use to think about the language deeper. When we think about the language used deeper, when we think about the sounds, when there is a certain rhythm to it, there is also an added sense to it. The sense of the lines, if you're just reading it as a prose piece, it is just a note to someone. I am not going to think much deeper about it. I am thinking much deeper about it. I am thinking about the positioning of each of these words, and it makes sense to me. It gives me more meanings, it gives me more dimensions. The first time I read this poem, it is simply a poem about somebody who finds happiness in ordinary things. That was what the poem was for me about. But it is just not just that. It is somebody who is finding happiness in ordinary things and who realizes that this is a new feeling for them because there was a point in their life that this was not the case. They could not find peace and happiness in ordinary things, and somebody who was not glad that they existed but now is glad that they exist. And what changes that for me, what reveals that for me, is something called the enjambment. In the second stanza, you have end stop lines here, right? Almost every line in this poem has a complete sense, has complete meaning. At lunchtime, I bought a huge orange. You know what that means. The size of it made us all laugh. Complete in meaning. I peeled it and shared it with Robert and Dave. Complete. They got quarters and I had half. Another line that is complete in its sense. And that orange, it made me so happy. Again, complete in its sense. But the first time we see a line that does not end completely, as ordinary things often do, has a sense, but it is not complete until you read the line just lately. That just lately is so important that the poet has highlighted it using that one specific technique of enjambment. That just lately seems to be hiding at the core of the poem, but that just lately is so important. It is so important because that time marker, the late, that I am only able to enjoy these ordinary things. These ordinary things have started to bring me happiness only recently. This recentness is quite important. This is one of the most important aspects of this poem. And it is highlighted through that placement, through enjambment, poetic technique. So if it was a prose piece, that just lately would be just part of that sentence somewhere. It wouldn't be highlighted the way that it would in a poetry, in a piece of poem. So that is what I think makes this a poem. And poems can be about anything. It can be about oranges. It can be about so many different things. And we will see some of these different themes that people talk about. But there are two things that poems are almost always about. One, very particular personal experiences. Two, very general universal experiences. Most poems that succeed are often both at the same time. They are personal and they are universal. And I hope we will see that in the poems that we look at next as well.
Ashwin, I just had a doubt.
Yes.
This M dash, right? This is M dash, no? After
Yes,
orange
it is an M
and
dash.
day.
It is an
So,
M dash.
what is its function? I mean, why is it there? And
So M dash, technically in grammar, M dash is an informal substitute for most formal punctuation. You can use it in place of a full stop. You can use it in place of a comma. You can sometimes use it in the place of an exclamation mark or even a hyphen. It is used as a replacement for many other formal punctuation marks. M dash is usually a little bit informal. It is not formal. So it is it does imply a longer pause, but it is a shorter pause than a full stop. So if you put a full stop, it is supposed to be a longer pause than an M dash. But it is a short, it's a longer pause. The M dash is a longer pause than a comma as well. So it's somewhere, it's a gray area. It gives you that freedom to play with the language and pause and space.
Ashwin, I don't recognize two words that you used. One was the M dash, and one was what you said for just lately. You said something. I didn't recognize that.
Enjambment. I will.
Can you just spell it out for me?
Yes. Enjambment. So it is a very technical term used in poetry when a line runs on, a run-on line. A run-on line is called an enjambment.
So Ashwin,
yeah.
When there's enjambment, does it affect the way you read the poem when you're reciting it out loud? Like for that second paragraph, would you,
yes.
Second stanza,
yes.
Would you read, as ordinary things often do? The normal line is, as ordinary things often do just lately.
Yes.
But because there's an enjambment, would you give it a slight pause?
See, a poem like this, the orange, which has a certain, syllable length for each line, I still go as ordinary things often do, just lately, the shopping, walk in the park, this is peace and contentment, it's new. I would pause a bit there. But if it was a poem with slightly more irregular sort of line lengths, then I would pause a little briefer because it's an enjambment, because my mind doesn't compute the sense of the line without the rest of the line. I have to jump to the next line.
Yeah,
I don't, like if I stop and pause, like my mind is not computing what is being said. So I have to move on slightly faster than I would normally do.
The thing is, with the enjambment, it makes sense before the enjambment and after. Like, as ordinary things often do, is also
Yes.
a sentence.
Yes.
And just lately is also a sentence.
Yes.
But do also has to rhyme with new.
New, yeah.
Correct?
It is not, that's what I'm saying. It is not here just to rhyme.
Okay, it's not just, okay.
It has another purpose, because just lately breaking it off there, of course, do and new rhyme, fantastic, it works, it has to work because she is using a regular rhyme scheme. So it has to work here for her. But at the same time, the enjambment is not just to enable that sort of music, it also enables that sort of pause. That pause allows you some time to think, but at the same time, it also hurries you along, as Archana says.
Yeah.
Right. So when you are reading a longer poem, if you have an end stop line, you stop there, pause, take a breath, and move on to the next line. But it is, if it is an enjambed or run-on line, you rather has to pause a little bit, move a little slower, or a little quicker than you would do for an end stop line. So
Thanks so much.
Yeah.
Got it.
So kind of when we, in music, if it's dha din din dha, you know, tetal we're doing, then suddenly there's one that goes beyond the 4 meter. It's like, goes only for one line.
You to the next, right? Which pushes you to the next beat,
line.
right?
Yeah.
Exactly what it is doing. Exactly what an enjam line does. It pushes you to the next beat, next line. There is no full stop after do, yet the J just in cap. So it is convention. Archana, what is happening is convention. As Rahana pointed out, just all lines are capitalized. It is a convention. It's a choice. Poets can choose to capitalize every line, or there are poets like I myself personally do not prefer to capitalize a word just because it appears at the beginning of the line. It doesn't have to be capitalized, but you can. It is, but do it consistently within a poem. If you're doing it like within the poem, it should be consistent. That's all. Otherwise, it would just blow the mind of the reader. Like, why is the poet doing this?
Yes.
Like, why are you doing this? Like, you have J capitalized here, but you don't have A capitalized there. Why are you doing this?
Yes.
It will just, if somebody asks over analytical as I read it, they will just lose their minds. So or dismiss you as somebody who didn't care enough about it. So I don't know which is worse. So another thing you asked me about was M dash. M dash is a hyphen or a dash that is as long as the letter M. It's M dash and N dash are terms that are used in typing. They're used, like if a dash is as long as an N, then it is an N dash. If it is as long as an M, letter M, then it is an M dash. M dash is the longer dash. You have hyphen, which comes in between the N dash and an M dash. So these are the 3 dashes in punctuation, technically. So N dash is often used only in, in between numbers and all. Like you have 12/7/2022, then you probably use that sort of an N dash. And M dash is used as an informal sort of punctuation. Hyphen is used in very specific cases when words need to be hyphenated.
Okay, thanks so much. Thanks for clarifying that. I didn't know.
And there is a definition of a poem, of poetry, that I have just shared with you in the chat. Poetry is an egg with a horse inside. Take a moment. Tell me if it makes any sense to you, if it is interesting, if it's something that you will, get behind.
I think it means expect the unexpected, because I wouldn't expect a horse inside an egg. So there's.
Or maybe just outside it looks, a very smaller thing, but there is something big hidden inside.
also, I think in something relatively small, you can have something quite huge inside, much larger.
Yes.
I think we've lost connection with Ashwin. Ashwin, are you here?
I think Ashwin's lost connectivity.
Yes.
Hold on for 2 minutes.
So one thing I noticed while Ashwin is not here, I can see it. You know, that last para, I did all the jobs on my list and enjoyed them and had some time over. That some time over is in the end of that line, and it kind of, you know, hangs a little bit like extra time that you have.
Yes.
It's kind of strange how if you look at a poem long enough, then you see other things that, you know, you never thought of in the beginning.
Also, I love you. I'm glad I exist. For me, that means the poet is talking about the paper. I love you. And the enjoyment of writing the poem. I'm so glad that I can write this. I'm loving you, loving the poem, loving this process of writing the poem, and enjoying that. I mean, I'm glad.
Yeah, it's not a personal I love you. It's not like a human being I love you, you're saying.
Yes, I'm saying it's loving the poem, the paper, or whatever he's writing it on.
Good. That's a good thought. Cool.
I get very startled when a you is introduced in a poem suddenly, because it's directly talking to the reader or some other person that's not introduced in the poem yet.
And in my morning pages, I often have a line like that at the end if I really enjoyed writing that morning's writing. So
what amused me is that I love you is such a cliche, right?
Can't hear.
Is it your voice, Isabel?
We can't hear you.
Can you get closer to the mic? Ashwin, are you back?
I'm there, but this was Kinjal,
No,
right?
I'm talking to Ashwin. Ashwin is here.
Ashwin. Okay.
Hi. Hi guys. So sorry, my internet suddenly decided it has to stop working. Yeah. Can you hear me, guys? Hello.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. Yeah. So sorry that yeah, my internet completely bailed on me, and I have no clue why. So yeah, so sorry about that. And yeah, would absolutely love to hear some of your thoughts. I'm using my mobile data, that's why I have switched my camera off. As soon as I can get back on Wi-Fi, I'll switch my camera on. Any thoughts on the quote that I shared? Any ideas? Any thoughts?
I felt that it was like you have to break the poem to see the horse. Like you can't really see the horse from outside. So you have to really break down the poem to understand what it is standing for, what it is trying to convey.
and then, I mean, egg we usually presume is a bird's egg, right? We don't think of a mammalian, tiny little one-cell egg. Usually, we don't think about it, and so it's something unexpected inside there.
Yeah, I also felt that the more you break it, the content inside is growing larger in size. I mean, we find new things every time. Something else calls out to us. Something else speaks out to us.
Absolutely.
Also, I didn't think it was a mammalian egg. That's what he said. I don't think that's the egg that the quote refers to, but that's a new opinion.
It's like it's encased, and once you open it, you find something special in it, like the chick coming out of an egg. you know, once you open it, then something great comes out of it.
But here you get a horse instead of a chick.
What is the significance of it being a horse? What do you think?
It's fast.
It's fast, very dynamic sort of an animal, right? Like
Strength.
it's very powerful. It's quick. It has some dynamism to it, and an egg. An egg is, you know, most of us imagine an egg to be white. It has some sort of perfection to it. It has a completeness, a wholeness. And so it's this sort of a contrast that works for me, that you know, kind of draws me to that particular quote. Poetry is an egg with a horse inside. So there is something that is always inside, something that is full of life, something that is full of dynamism, that's ready and waiting to jump out of this shell, out of its you know, kind of protected existence. It's just waiting to leap out, and it is and there is also some certain sense of calmness, a certain sense of wholeness and completeness at the surface that you see as well. And these are two qualities of a poem two qualities that I would adore in a poem: a sense of completeness, a polish, a sense of wholeness at the surface, but life and dynamism inside. When you crack it open, there should be something thriving there, something that is ready to leap and jump. So this is something I really like about this particular quote, and that is why I wanted to share it with you. And to say who it is from, it is apparently from a third grader in US, when third graders were asked to write about poetry and define poetry, a child wrote that, you know, poetry is an egg with a horse inside. So most of the time, it's not the poets who really manage to define what poem is. It's children, because they understand play better than anyone else. Poetry is essentially play, and better than any adult can children understand what it means to play with something. And language is one of the most flexible clay that we have at our disposition to mold into various things. And it's no surprise to me that a child is able to articulate better what poetry is than a poet. When you ask a poet, they'll probably not be able to give such a succinct and potent answer. So yeah, with that, shall we move on to the second poem? If we are only, we are in the second hour, but we are only on the second poem. I don't mind it though. Anyone who wants to read it? Any volunteers? Highly appreciated.
I could read it. Should I go ahead?
Please, thank you. Sheetal.
1 second, just hold on. Good Bones by Maggie Smith. Life is short, though I keep this from my children. Life is short, and I've shortened mine. In 1,000 delicious, ill-advised ways, 1,000 deliciously ill-advised ways, I'll keep from my children. The world is at least 50% terrible, and that's a conservative estimate, though I keep this from my children. For every bird, there is a stone thrown at a bird. For every loved child, a child broken, bagged, sunk in the lake. Life is short, and the world is at least half terrible. And for every kind stranger, there is one who would break you. Though I keep this from my children, I'm trying to sell them the world. Any decent realtor walking you through a real shithole chirps on about good bones. This place could be beautiful, right? You could make this place beautiful.
At least some of you would have come across this poem, because this is one of the very widely circulated on Instagram, because this is a genre of poems that, I think very popular. Maggie Smith and what's her name? Like there's a certain group of poets who are widely circulated on platforms like Instagram and Facebook, because they're so easy to read, but they give us such a solid message with like in that very seemingly simple structure of that poem. And yeah, this is a poem I quite like, because it uses some very simple techniques very efficiently and does a lot of things that a good poem must do. And can you tell me what strikes you in this poem? If there is something you like, something you dislike, something that you think that makes this poem, a good poem, a bad poem, whatever.
I was struck by the use of repetition, and each time the repetition means something slightly different. 1,000 delicious, ill-advised ways. And that just sounds like indulgence. And then the second time she says, 1,000 deliciously ill-advised ways I'll keep from my children. And she does it a few times. It's brilliant.
It's very effectively as well. She kind of creates a repetitive shine, which is slightly playful, but also dead serious. Like she's very serious in what she's talking about, but she uses that repetition to kind of lighten the load for us, kind of make it, palatable, that sort of thing. And yeah, repetition, of course, like as prose writers, as writers, we all employ repetition, and repetition can weigh heavily on a poem, but there are very, very impressive ways in which you can employ it.
What it looked like was that she's trying to show her children only the good side of life. Only she's sheltering them from the world, from the big bad world, which all parents do. They shelter us from the big bad world and just show us, as kids, they show us the good side of life. So I think that's what she's trying to convey here.
Absolutely, that is the universal message. When we were discussing the earlier poem, I said most good poems do two things. One, talk about something personal, something private, something very specific and particular. Most good poems also have that other aspect, which is talking about something universal, something others connect to, others relate to. Even if you have never been a parent, you know parents, like you have your own parents, or parents. So the sense of a parent wanting to protect their child from the ills of the world, this is a universal sort of feeling. This is sort of an emotion that is universally understood, maybe not felt, but universally understood. So that is something that makes a poem palatable to everyone, something that makes a poem, as I said, it's a poem that spreads widely on social media platforms. One reason is this, because its underlying message is something so simple, something so human, something so universal, that we want to protect our children from the ills of the world. Yes. So yes, I completely agree with your observation, Sheetal.
Thank you.
So we have repetition. We have the universal message. What is a particular, like, that's what we are breaking down in the first one, right? We are breaking down each of the particular images that are being used. What is that particular image that kind of makes this poem so potent? What is the kind of central image that we see? What does the title refer to? What does the title allude to?
And it says that though the external pearl that you see is not as good as you want it to be, but the bones are good. That means the internal structure is basically good and sound. Yeah. And if you rebuild it, you can build a beautiful world. Is that right?
I think so. Yes, I think it is true. Yeah.
Yeah.
There is something inside that is solid. That is something, that a foundation that you can build on. And I think the crucial line, the kind of most important line in this poem for me is the last line. you could make this place beautiful. Because this is what is key. The world may be half bad and half good. But what makes this world beautiful? What makes use of these good bones? Who can build on these good bones? It's not me, but it's you. You could make this place beautiful. So the parent figure is kind of entrusting the world to their children, that the children, the future generation possibly could make this world a better place. Just like a realtor selling this world, selling a place to the new owners who would be able to, there is something good about, I quite like that image. When you go hunting for houses, you see places like, it's so cheap. You just have to have a, just coat of whitewash and it will be a very, very nice place to live. That's what they tell you. They try to sell the place to you, even though you know that all the faucets are leaking and the paint is completely peeled off and the building will probably crumple on your head in a couple of months. They still try to sell that place to you. That's the kind of place that the speaker is presenting the world to us as, and kind of trying to sell the world to us. Yeah, it's the only shithole with the hole we have got. So yeah, there is that. Yeah, brokenness, vulnerability, and that despite the shithole that the world is, the onus is on us to make it beautiful. It's an appeal to action. Yeah, in many ways, it's an appeal to action. And yeah, Archana also says something interesting. It's a kind of a rambly, long poem. And how does it manage that sort of pace? How does the poem build pace?
Enjambment?
Enjambment, yes. Because almost in the beginning, almost every alternate line is an enjambed line. So it just pushes you even further and even further. And combine that with something called the repetition. When you are repeating it and you are pushing it differently, you are enjambing it differently. The first line, life is short, though I keep this from my children. Life is short and I have shortened mine 1,000 delicious. So you have jumped off the cliff in 1,000 delicious ill-advised ways. 1,000 deliciously ill-advised ways I'll keep from my children. And you are coming back. There is some kind of circularity. It says, I keep from my children, and you are coming back to keeping from my children. There is that circularity, that repetition. So by the 6th line or 5th or 6th line, you are already repeated most of the phrases that have appeared. So it's developing that sort of familiarity and spacing it out in such a way that it does not feel like you are being suffocated. You are not being lulled into song. This is not a song where you repeat the same line again and again and again in the same way. But rather you're using that repetition, you're rearranging the way it is being used, and you are also mildly altering it so that every time it appears, it's familiar, but it's also new. That is where the technique of the poet comes, and that is where what makes the poem fresh and interesting to the reader.
Could I read the poem again?
Sure.
Good Bones by Maggie Smith. Life is short, though I keep this from my children. Life is short, and I've shortened mine in 1,000 delicious, ill-advised ways. 1,000 deliciously ill-advised ways I'll keep from my children. The world is at least 50% terrible, and that's a conservative estimate, though I keep this from my children. For every bird, there's a stone thrown at a bird. For every loved child, a child broken, bagged, sunk in a lake. Life is short, and the world is at least half terrible. And for every kind stranger, there's one who would break you, though I keep this from my children. I'm trying to sell them the world. Any decent realtor walking you through a real shithole chirps on about good bones. This place could be beautiful, right? You could make this place beautiful.
Some fantastic discussion in the chats as well. This is also showing how we can read as most of you already know this. You don't need me to tell this. the poem can be read in so many different ways. It's our subjective experiences that we bring to the poem. So there is a set of particular images, very specific particular images that are being used here. When it says life is short and I keep this from my children, so the speaker of the poem is bringing in their own children, which is a very specific kind of relationship. It's bringing that parent-child relationship into the question right away. And when they suggest that they have shortened their life in 1,000 ill-advised ways, 1,000 deliciously ill-advised ways, it is suggesting a lot of things. It's not specific. It is not as specific as saying that these are the 1,000 things I did, but it's also saying that I have shortened my life in many ways, because it is something that I have done as a person. These are the choices that I have made, and I have shortened my life as a result of it. And goes on to talk about the good in the world and the bad in the world and how it gets manifested. Very specific image. For every bird, there is a stone thrown at the bird. It's a very specific image, very specific way of saying that there are good people and there are bad people. We can just say that there are good people, there are bad people. But good and bad are abstract concepts. But a bird is the manifestation of that abstract concept of something good or beautiful. And a stone being thrown at a bird is the manifestation of that abstract concept of evil or something being broken, something being destroyed. So that's sort of the ability to use something specific to build on something universal. The experience of parenthood, the desire to protect your children from something evil, and the hope or belief that the world is going to be rebuilt in a different way only by the next generation, only by the future, only by the children. So bringing together these two things is what makes a poem very dynamic and something that makes a poem work, in my estimation. I'm not saying this is the only way to write a poem. This is one of the crucial ways to think about and conceive a poem. But when we are writing a poem, when we are thinking about a poem, what is it that we are saying about? Most often we are talking about our own personal, private experiences. So what is the experience? How specific can we get with that experience? And what are the specific images that we can bring together to talk about it? And there are many interesting ways in which you can talk about your personal experience without even saying a word about what your actual experience is. And we will look at two of those examples in the next two poems. Shall we move on to the third? Kinjal, are you here? Yes. After Years by Ted Kooser.
Kinjal, I'm not able to see the screen.
Ma'am, are you seeing me? Is that what you're seeing?
Yeah, I mean, everybody.
Try double tapping on my window. Does it help?
No.
No.
So that's fine. You go on.
Yeah.
Sorry, no response. Okay, it doesn't matter. Go ahead.
I could read.
Mandagini, one second. I'll come get back to you because there's a question from Pallavi here about the earlier poem. So I keep this from my children. Can we call it an anaphora? Yes. See, anaphora is a very specific device. Here, I would say it is repetition, and I wouldn't go as far as to say it is anaphora, because anaphora is usually a repetition of a phrase or a word usually at the beginning of a line or a stanza, which happens recurs throughout the poem. That is not happening here. There is not that recurrence throughout the poem is something that we do not see. And usually an anaphora would be at least 3 times. You'd see something repeated at least 3 times. That's when I don't know exactly what the rules on this is, but yeah, that is, I think, closer, because anaphora is a very specific device. When you have every stanza starting with the same phrase or word, then you can probably call it an anaphora. Yeah, we cannot dedicate, we cannot consecrate, we cannot. So we cannot is being repeated every time, right? Okay. Yeah. So Mandagini, can we get to the next poem, After Years?
Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
After Years by Ted Kooser. Today, from a distance, I saw you walking away, and without a sound, the glittering face of a glacier slid into the sea. An ancient oak fell in the Cumberlands, holding only a handful of leaves. And an old woman scattering corn to her chickens looked up for an instant. At the other side of the galaxy, a star 35 times the size of our own sun exploded and vanished, leaving a small green spot on the astronomer's retina as he stood on the great open dome of my heart with no one to tell.
Thank you, Mandagini. So we all know the universal experience that is being talked about here, right?
I think the first para is about someone feeling depressed and slipping into depression and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And even the second para, Cumberland holding handful of leaves. That
You mean sentence, right? The sentence, the second
yeah,
sentence.
the first
Okay,
sentence.
okay, yeah.
So it's about something withering.
Something withering, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. What is withering? Like, do you have a clue what is withering? What is happening here? What is happening in this moment?
Like while the world is going on, there is something else happening in everyone's life which is withering away. Our time is withering away.
Yes.
Our life is withering away. But life is still going on. Even though our life withers, there is life still going on, in the universe is still going to be there, and it's going to live. But our life is short-lived, and we have to live it according to the way we want to. But
Sure.
our life is short-lived and is withering.
Sure. So, like, one thing that I absolutely agree with you here is that the images of withering, of some sort of decay. And how is it employed is my question. What does he open with? What is he opening? What is the poet opening with?
I think the title here is very significant because it says after years.
Yes.
So there is a lot of time that has passed. Okay.
Yeah.
And so even when the first two lines, when he says, today from a distance, I saw you walking away, I'm not sure whether he's talking about now or whether this is a memory that has come back.
I would read it this way. I would read it like this. After years, today, today, from a distance, I saw you.
Yes,
It's after so many years, I'm seeing you again today.
Again, but in person or in memory is something which I'm not yet able to come. Yes, I'm not able to decide whether it's a memory that has come back to me today after so many years or not. So I'm not sure he's seen her physically. He may have after so many years. And the fact that he's juxtaposed, you know, this particular moment where that memory has come of someone going away and the face of a glacier that is sliding into the sea. After so many years, the glacier builds up and then suddenly it slips down. An ancient oak, again, he says, so which has been around for a long time and then fallen off its side. And it has what? Just a few leaves left. So that is what he seems to be left with also in that relationship which he seems to have, or whatever emotions he seems to have invested in that woman. He seems to be left with nothing. It's very poignant, you know, it's very sad. And look at the juxtaposition of events. And all this, when something is shaking around you, something is happening around you, there is this old woman, and I wasn't very sure what to make of it, scattering corn to her chickens, which seems like an ordinary event. But she looks up because there is something that is happening, something that has shifted for sure. She looks up, but again, it's only for an instant. That to me is very significant. because everything is happening here. You notice it, but it doesn't you sort of go on maybe feeding the chickens. So the same thing happens later also when there's something huge that's blown. There's a star that he's talking about. And then again, it leaves a small green spot. And there's no one to share it with. So I find this sad. It's love, it's longing, and it's loss to me.
It's an incredible loss that,
Yes.
the loss is being felt at the level of the universe, and across continents and across centuries. That is what is being implied here, right? Today, from a distance, I saw you. Very simple, very straightforward. Like after years, like we are assuming that it is after years because I have seen you. Probably this is someone I used to see on a daily basis. So after years, today, from a distance, I'm not even close to you. There is a distance. The implied distance could be physical distance, but it is not necessarily just physical distance because you and I are distant. There is so much distance between us. Today, there's the distance of time. That is, as it is after years, and it's also the distance that is developed in the relationship. Today, from a distance, I saw you, and you didn't even see me. There is not even you recognizing me or you seeing me. None of that. Just I saw you walking away, and you are not walking towards me. You're walking away from me. So the distance is building and distance is just increasing. And without a sound, you're walking away and without a sound. So I think this is a brilliant way of switching tracks because I immediately think about it as I saw you walking away and without a sound. You're walking away without a sound. So what about it? But you are not walking away without sound. It's not the one that is not making the sound is not you. But without a sound, the glittering face of a glacier slid into the sea. Something momentous happened, something very, very significant, something huge, something glacial, literally glacial happened. Face of a glacier slid into the sea. An ancient oak, as Archana said, something ancient. Some glacier is also something that a glacier sliding into a sea is something that happens so many decades. It does not happen overnight, but it happened at that moment. The moment I saw you walking away from me, it happened. And an ancient oak, an ancient.
We lost him.
Hello, Ati?
Yes, I can. Can you hear? I can't hear anybody. Hello?
Hello?
Yes.
I think you can't hear anybody because nobody's talking right now.
Nobody's talking. Okay. So we've lost him. Ashwin, I guess. We've lost Ashwin, I think. Okay.
Yeah, here I am. Anita here.
Yes, Anita. Can hear you.
Hello.
Ashwin has.
Yeah. So does it mean that is he saying that he saw somebody or he just remembered somebody? He or she.
It could
be that is not specified. No? That is
No,
is
but
something
just
you
now what he was
assume.
saying is it an impression or a real reality?
You wouldn't know.
We wouldn't know.
It could be a memory. It could be someone he's seen after a long time. You never know.
I works both ways.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
That's
me,
an interesting question. What can you repeat that question? Did you guys already discuss it? I really missed that.
Yeah, I was asking whether you meant whether it was a impression or a reality of the seeing the person.
What do you think?
I thought it was a real thing.
So did I.
Okay, that they actually, yeah, they actually met that person after a long time. Yes, sure. How important is it?
How? Not at all for me. For me, it's not important at all.
How important is it that they actually met that person or thought about that person?
But he is very clear that it's from a distance. So it could be physical distance, it could be the number of years that have passed.
Yes.
Because it's very could be time. Is looking back after so many years. Or it could be, yes, at that particular moment, but from a distance.
Yeah.
Actually, I don't think it's a memory because the author is trying to place it right now. As I saw you walking away, the face of a glacier slid into the sea. An ancient oak fell in the Cumberland. So all these things happen across the world. They're always happening. But at that very time when I saw you walking away, this happened. So he's trying to make it catastrophic. He's trying to make it look like something terrible happened. And terrible things happen, but as of right now, only one person is walking away from him. So.
Oh, I didn't feel there was terrible things happening at all. I thought, when they left, he was left with the broken heart, with the frozen heart, and he's been building on that frozen stuff over the years, and he saw her and he melted. He melted, and all of that knowledge that he thought that was there, he thought was knowledge in that ancient tree, it wasn't true anymore. It just collapsed. He had false beliefs in all of this of the ancient oak, and it didn't exist anymore. He only had a handful of leaves, and that thought wasn't there anymore. So that's what I thought of it.
Yeah, so I would concur with both there is something terrible happening. Something terrible happening is not the glacier melting, not the tree falling in the Cumberlands, or the woman looking up because hearing the sound of a falling tree would make anybody look up, from your mundane everyday chores, or neither is it the combustion. What is he saying? Yeah, other side of the galaxy, a star 35 times the size of our own exploded and vanished. The explosion and vanishing of the sun is not the terrible thing that is happening here. None of this is terrible. All of this is natural. All of this is usual. All of this is everyday. But all of this is also glacial and momentous and huge. And this is all happening where? Inside the heart of the speaker. Because the astronomer is standing on the great open dome of my heart with no one to tell. There is something that happens at that moment of contact between the speaker and the person that they are witnessing. At that moment, that is so indescribable that he has to describe something entirely different, something so momentous that it is so difficult for us to conceive, all happening at the same time, right? How often does all of this happen at the same time? Probably it is all happening all the time, so they are all happening always. But at the same time, all of it happening at the same time is also improbable in some ways. But it is all happening at the same time inside the heart of the speaker. Does that make sense?
Hello? Yeah,
yes,
it makes
sense. But only
but you mean it could go? It could be either way, either the memory or the reality of meeting after a long time.
What about that? I think it doesn't matter, because it is the contact. Whether it is the actual physical seeing of that person or the seeing of that person in the mind's eye, it doesn't matter. What matters to me as a reader, and probably in my consideration to the speaker of the poem, what matters is what it triggers. That that the memory or the sight of that one person triggers something momentous in them. There is a sense of incredible loss. I think Mandagini or Archana said this as we started discussing this one. There is an incredible sense of loss, right? There is a terrible sense of loss, and which is reconciled only in hindsight. Probably that memory or probably that actual act of seeing them again is what makes it, is what makes the speaker realize how important the other person was to them. I think that is what it is. Yeah. Archana, I think it's a sonnet. Yeah. Why not? We'll talk about sonnets again soon. Yeah. We have 3 sonnets in that sense. This poem, next poem, and the poem after are all sonnets, so to speak.
Yeah, I intuitively wouldn't keep this spacing. I would have said today from a distance, and I would have gone to the next line. I saw you walking away. Next line, without a sound, the glittering face. Next line, of a glacier slid into the sea. And I'm wondering, how do you decide where to break the line?
Yeah. So, does anyone want to comment on that? Anybody has any thoughts on that? Like, why? Like, does this line spacing work for you? Would you have done it differently? Anybody have any thoughts? Anyone?
I couldn't hear the question, Aswin. What were you saying?
So the question is, I'm sorry, but someone was asking, yeah, why? Like, someone was saying that they would have done the line break differently. Say, today from a distance, I saw you sound that they would do the line spaces differently. How do you think? What is your opinion, or what is your thoughts about the way the line spacing is done in this, or line breaks are done in this poem, and how? Yeah.
So if you look at the lines, on the first, the second line is walking away. It begins with walking away. The fourth line is slid into the sea. The fourth line is something fell. And then there is the woman scattering. So I find all this, the action seems to be in the beginning, in the first, in the beginning of the lines.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
I mean, instead of, normally we would put a noun or a, something and then put the action a little later. And typically we put it towards the end of the line. But here, each one, the action is in the beginning of each line. I saw you walking away. The glittering face slid into the sea.
There is a very a very conscious choice of using the verb at first and keeping the noun to the end. So you are ending mostly with nouns. You're starting with verbs, right? So that it's a conscious choice. Yeah. So that is
it's not consistent all through, but quite a bit.
No, it is not. It's quite a bit, but it's not consistent all through. It's very almost always the first word of the line and towards the last line of the word, last word of the line. Sorry, it's quite significant because if it's an action word or a noun, it carries more weight. There is more significance. I saw you. To end with something like you. So the focus of the first line remains on you, and the focus of the entire poem remains on you because it is placed in such a way. And walking and glittering and slid and fell, because they are so packed with action, it carries the momentum to the rest of the poem as well. Vanished as he stood. So these sort of actions would carry the momentum toward the rest of the line as well.
So there are 2 points which I don't understand too well. One is, I mean, the ancient oak and the glacier and the sun is kind of consistent. But then there is the old woman who's scattering corn, and there is this green spot on the retina of the astronomer. And somehow those two things are different. And what do they signify?
Any takers for that question? Anyone else want to answer it? Because I have an answer, but that does not.
I didn't even understand the question again. What is the thing?
Sorry.
The green star and what
I'm
is
saying is that the glacier, the oak, and the star are like, explosions or something is happening, which is, very significant. But on the other hand, it is juxtaposed with an old woman scattering corn and a small green spot on an astronomer's retina. And what is this? What do these two things do? What are they for?
Okay, may I just a little bit, Ashwin, I wanted to say, because people were talking about the sonnet in the chat, right?
Yeah.
So there was this discussion: is this a sonnet? Isn't this a sonnet?
Yeah.
So one of the characteristics of a sonnet is something called a volta. Are you guys familiar with it?
No.
So the volta is a turn, right?
Yeah.
And as this question actually raises a point, because it's exactly that turn.
Yeah.
Right. I'm going to leave it to Ashwin to answer the rest, because he is much more knowledgeable than I am.
So I would love to talk about volta and sonnet form, because it is going to be important going forward. Because I hope to read at least one more poem in this session, depending on how long you are willing to tolerate me. First I will address the question about the two onlookers, right? Two people that appear in the poem other than the I and the you. There are only two other people appearing in this poem other than the I and the you. So what is the I doing? I is looking at the you. And you is not doing anything that is like anything consciously. You is walking away. The you is walking away. The I is looking at the you. And what does the woman do? The old woman scattering corn to her chicken. She looks up as a response to the sound of the tree falling in the forest. Something momentous happens. In response, she looks up. What does the astronomer do? Astronomer is also looking up at the star exploring. So in that sense, both the old woman and the astronomer reflect the action of the speaker of the poem, looking at something momentous that is happening. In a sense, both of them are stand-ins for the speaker himself. And this is made more evident by the fact of that person standing on the dome of the speaker's heart. The astronomer is standing on the dome of the speaker's heart, which means the astronomer is within. The astronomer is within the self of the speaker. So whatever momentous is happening in the universe is equated to the you walking away. And whoever is looking at this momentous act is equated to the speaker of the poem. Does that make sense?
Very well explained. Excellent.
Yeah. So in that way, so that is how you build a world, right? This is a world being built in very few lines, 14 lines as said. So just creating that's something personal, extremely personal, turned into something extremely universal in a different sense. Something that relates to the universe. It's changed into something that relates to the universe around us. So leaving a small green spot on the astronomer's retina. So retina again, bringing to focus the act of seeing or looking. As he stood on the great open dome of my heart, with no one to tell. So that is where all the action is actually happening, on the dome of the great open dome of my heart. Such a beautiful image in my estimation. Great open dome of my heart. And because astronomers stand on these great open domes to watch the stars, and my heart is that great open dome from where I am watching, or this miniature self is watching this star exploding. The act of you walking away is the act of, or the action of the star exploding. It's being equated. So now coming to something very crucial, the structure of the poem or the form of the poem, because here it's 14 lines, and 14 lines is something that we usually associate with the classical poetic form of a sonnet. What makes a sonnet a sonnet? Any answers? Mandagini said one thing, a volta, 14 lines. Volta, yes. What else? We'll talk about.
I'd also like to refer to the word stanza, which was used earlier. Right?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
These are words from Latin or Italian.
Yeah.
And stanza means a room.
Yeah.
A sonnet is a very tightly condensed form, which is just one room. There is nothing more. Right?
Yeah.
So there's only one stanza in this poem.
Okay.
And a volta is a turn.
Mm.
And of course, the fun is to discover the turn for the reader.
Yeah. And one thing is, the volta can be subjective also. Okay, like it doesn't necessarily, we don't all have to necessarily agree. There are some poems where the volta is evident, volta is obvious, you know exactly where the turn of the poem happens, but not necessarily. You don't necessarily have to agree. I can say this is definitely, in my interpretation of this poem, in my reading of this poem, this is exactly where the poem turns. This is where things change. And thus, this is the volta of the poem. Volta, just as Mandagini said, it is a turning point of the poem. So it can be, it also depends in some ways on the reading of the poem. So, of course, there is a turn in this poem. Where do you think is the poem turning? It's not a easy question to ask.
The last line.
Last line, yeah. Of my, okay. My open dome of my heart will know.
Before that, everything is about somebody else seeing something, but then now it's come to him where he's seeing something or feeling something.
Is it the other side of the galaxy?
At the other side of the galaxy. Okay, that's where you think the turn happens. Okay, sure.
So I can't resist chipping in here.
Yeah.
Normally the volta happens either in the 8th line.
Yeah.
There are some clues. Look at the 8th line.
Yeah.
Or
you can.
Or
12th line sometime, right? Like Shakespearean poems sometime take the volta as late as the 12th line, right?
Correct.
Yeah,
I was waiting for some things. So let's read the 8th line or the 12th line and see what happens.
Yeah, go ahead. See, the thing is, we don't have to, because there is very limited time with our hands. I can't go to the history of one of the oldest English poetic, conventional poetic forms, which is sonnet. But sonnet typically has 14 lines, and these 14 lines can be arranged in different ways, like 8/6 as an octet and a sestet, or 4 quatrains and a couplet. These are usually 2 of the ways in which you see sonnets. One is a Petrarchan or Italian sonnet with the octet and the sestet form, or the English or the Shakespearean sonnet, which you see with the quatrains and the couplet. But going into the history of it, talking about like how it has developed and all, would take us an inordinate amount of time. But what we are doing here, or the poems that I have chosen in this selection are doing, is actually taking absolute complete liberty with the form. Because sonnet is a very restrictive sort of form, which has a specific rhyme scheme, which has a specific length of the lines. Usually, you have iambic pentameters or some similar sort of rhyme scheme or a rhythm scheme that you have, or a meter that is set, and in which you would construct a sonnet. In the sonnets I have selected do not follow any such patterns. There is a rough syllabic count that Ted Kooser follows here, where you have about 9 syllables in almost every line. But this is also not strictly followed. He's taking liberties with it, but largely 9 syllables in every line, which helps to keep the length of the lines kind of visually similar. So, yeah. And there is a lot of things that you can do with this form. There is a lot of liberty that you can do with this form, and that is what these poets are doing. But something else I want to show you or point out to you regarding the form here is something that I call a hamburger, right? Can you look at this poem as a hamburger? Can you see what I mean? See, on the bottom you have the bread, and on the top you have the bread. Here, the bread is the personal experience of the poet, right? The personal experience or the feeling of the poet. Today, from a distance, I saw you walking away, which is the personal, right? At the bottom, you have the great open dome of my heart with no one to tell, which is again the personal feeling of the poet. And in between, you have the meat of the poem, which here is constituted by things observed around in the universe around. Shall we move on to the next poem so that we can at least have a read of it, so that we can see how the same hamburger pattern is done in a different way.
Can I read this one?
Yes, please, Vallavi, go ahead.
Oh, thank you. Atlantis, a Lost Sonnet by Eavan Boland. How on earth did it happen, I used to wonder, that a whole city, arches, pillars, colonnades, not to mention vehicles and animals, had all one fine day gone under. I mean, I said to myself, the world was small then. Surely a great city must have been missed. I miss our old city. White pepper, white pudding, you and I meeting, under fan lights and low skies to go home in it. Maybe what really happened is this. The old fable makers searched hard for a word to convey that what is gone forever, and never found it. And so, in the best traditions of where we come from, they gave their sorrow a name and drowned it.
Can you see what I'm talking about? Can you see what I'm talking about in terms of structure? And yeah, also look at what is being done inside the poem as well. What is the poem talking about?
The personal is in the middle. It's reversed.
What can you point out the person? Rahana, can you read that?
White pudding, you and I meeting under fan lights and no skies to go home in it.
I miss our old city. White pepper, white pudding, you and I meeting under fan lights and low skies to go home in it. This, in my estimation, is the meat of the poem. This is what the poem is all about. These three lines, this one sentence is what the poem is all about. But this is the only personal aspect of it. Even though the speaker of the poem is expressing an opinion, they are very clearly expressing an opinion. It says, I used to wonder, and I think, and I mean, and I said, and all of that. But they are not talking about anything personal. With all these I think, and I mean, and I said, and I wonder, she's not talking about anything personal. She's talking about something personal in that one sentence in the middle of it. And she squeezes it between a thought of a lot of other things, a lot of bun and a little bit of meat. It's a very interesting way to do it. So yeah, what is being talked about? What is Atlantis? What do you know about Atlantis?
I think it's a drowned city, and how it happened is being mixed with a personal
mixed with the personal story, right? Yeah. So, yeah.
For me, this person, he had built his world, his city around this person, and it's gone now.
Yeah.
And how do you explain why is it gone? I mean, well,
what is gone though? What is gone? Is the city gone?
His city is gone, or her city is gone. Yes. This
They are no
I
longer
felt is gone. You and me meeting under fan lights, that's gone somehow. For whatever reason, it's gone. And they can't get it back. It's gone forever.
Yeah, something is gone forever. That's for sure. That's absolutely sure, right? From the title itself, we are talking about loss. Atlantis. Atlantis is the lost city. And we are not just talking about the lost city, we are also talking about a lost sonnet. So in a sense, the poet is also alluding to the loss of the form. Loss of the form of poetry as well is being referred to here, because this is not a sonnet in any traditional sense, but it is a sonnet. Because sonnet is essentially a poem, usually 14 lines, but it's a poem about loss, about time, about loss.
This has 14 and a half lines almost, the last one, the phrase.
Yeah.
So it is a lost sonnet. See, there are 14, but it loses its way, and there's that little last, just those 3 words there.
Yeah.
That's the 15.
It's
not a complete line. So again, it's a lost sonnet.
It has kind of lost its way, right? The sonnet has lost its way, and it just spilled over, probably because of grief, probably making space for that sort of a personal. If you take that personal lines out, probably this will fit in as a sonnet form. Like you take out that personal lines, then you probably get this as a very conventional, compact sonnet. But the sonnet has lost its way in some ways. There is loss. There is loss of tradition. There is loss of a city, a whole city. How on earth did it happen? I used to wonder that a whole city, arches, pillars, colonnades, not to mention vehicles and animals, had all one fine day gone under. How on earth did it happen? How on earth did it happen? How did it happen on earth? How did it happen? So how on earth is an expression of wonder, but also it brings your mind to the fact that we live on a small earth, a small planet, where everything is connected, everything is, we are aware of the existence of others. How on earth, how did it happen on this earth? I used to wonder that a whole city, a whole thriving city with arches, pillars, colonnades, things that are man-made, not to mention vehicles and animals, symbols of progress and civilization and of natural world. Animals, vehicles and animals had all one fine day gone under. How does all of it just disappear in overnight, in one day? How does it happen without anybody noticing? I mean, I said to myself, the world was small then. Surely a great city must have been missed. There were not as many people as there are today in the world, even though it is not as connected as we call it today, but it still was a small world. People would have missed that, a city suddenly stopped trading with you. You would at least wonder what happened to them. You would send an expedition party, like if they just went under all overnight. What happened? I used to wonder. And then she gets to the crux of the matter. I miss our old city. So there is something that is being missed. The old city. White pepper, white pudding, you and I meeting under fan lights and low skies to go home in it. Maybe what really happened is this. Okay. Before that, I miss our old city, white pepper, white pudding, You and I meeting under fan lights and low skies to go home. What is that? What does that say? What is it about?
It's the specific.
Yeah.
It places everything.
Yeah. So,
and the personal.
What is happening here? What is the speaker talking about?
White pepper and white pudding, I understood. It's this a bit spicy, a bit sweet relationship we have. But what is this fan lights and low skies? I didn't understand.
So you know what fan light is? Fan light is the kind of pattern that is created on above the doorway with the light. If there is a glass panel, like the light, yeah. She has drawn it. Yeah, Archana has drawn it. So the glass panels above in an heart shape that you see above a doorway, which creates that sort of a fan-like effect. That's what a fan light is. Fan lights and low skies. Both probably referring to evening. Going home in a city. So the city itself is a home, and the fact of each other, the presence of each other is also home. So what is being lost is the old city, which presented the possibility of going home with you or going home in you. In that sort of sense, that this person that the speaker is addressing is probably the home. They felt at home with the other person. So that sense is lost. That whole experience in that city is lost. And yeah, I miss an old city, white pepper, white pudding, you and I meeting under fan lights and low skies to go home in it. Maybe what really happened is this: the old fable makers searched hard for a word to convey that what is gone is gone forever, and never found it. So she is coming to a conclusion. She is relating these two things, the loss of Atlantis and her own personal loss, and combining both of it together and making the suggestion that what really happened is this, that these old fable makers, people who created our stories, who is the biggest fable maker in the Western tradition?
Aesop.
Aesop, maybe, but the father of all of Western tradition, Western philosophical thought.
Santa Claus, whoever created Santa Claus.
Plato.
Who?
Socrates?
Plato is one of the, Plato's
He's a fable maker. He's a philosopher.
He is a philosopher, but most of his philosophy is stories. He is telling stories, he's creating myths, he's using myths and stories to make sense of the world around us.
Okay.
And Atlantis is one of the examples that he uses. Atlantis, one of the earlier references to Atlantis come from Plato. So in the best tradition of where we come from, that is Greece, right? Like the ancient Western European tradition or European philosophy kind of has its origins in someone like Plato. So he is one of the fable makers that she refers to here. And maybe what really happened is this: the old fable makers searched hard for a word to convey that what is gone forever. And this is the moment of epiphany in this poem, in my sense. That what is gone forever. This is the sense that the old fable makers wanted to convey. Some people like Plato wanted to convey. So what did they do? And so in the best tradition of where they come from, they gave their sorrow a name, Atlantis, drowned it. So the drowned sorrow is Atlantis. So
Atlantis symbolizes sorrow, which is drowned.
Yes. Or Atlantis symbolizes that what is gone forever. That what is gone forever. That realization is what Atlantis is.
For me, this person is missing somebody who's dead. And the world doesn't care. It's like the world just goes on, you know, how can it be? I mean, this person died and nobody cares in the entire earth, and nobody cares. It just goes on. And maybe it's like Atlantis disappeared and nobody cared that it disappeared.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. This is feeling people grieving feel, right? Like, how can the world go on when this person, this most important person has passed? How can the world go on? this is a sense that people grieving feel, and this is what people who are going through a heartbreak also feels. Like, how can I live without this person? Like,
But
they were my world, they were my city.
In the current context with war and things all over the place,
Yeah.
I mean, cities are also being destroyed. And in a way, you can also refer to that and think that, well, the space which we at one time occupied with our beloveds is no longer there. The beloved may be there or not, or the space itself is being smashed.
Yeah.
So
and Eavan Boland, quite importantly, from that perspective, Eavan Boland is an Irish poet who lived through the troubles, Irish troubles, which is a very long strife. So that kind of a reading is also very important in that context. So that, because this is all being written in the context of violence, of loss of a city, because being forced to move from a city can affect relationship, can actually affect the way you perceive life itself. So that's also there. So I think this is where we should draw a line. We should, because I still have 3 poems that I have brought, I have selected for today's session, but this is more than enough. Like, we have talked about poems, we have talked about the craft, we have talked about how we do things with the lines, how we do things with language, and what can be done. There is a lot more to talk about. There is always more to talk about in terms of poetry, because there's always things that we don't know, we learn by reading a new poem. And I hope, especially for those who are usually not used to reading poems this particular way, I have opened some way to read these poems, some semblance of a method to kind of look at a poem from within its scope, and to see how we can construct our own poems, how we can think about lines, how we can see what people are doing. You don't have to necessarily agree with everything that these poets are doing. You don't even have to like the poem much, but you can still read the poem in a way that is enjoyable, that is entertaining. See what they are doing with language, and what you can do with language, because language is such a potent clay that you can mold into so many different things. And thank you so much, Pune Writers Group, for this opportunity to talk to you guys about this.
Superb. Thank you so much, Ashwin. I really enjoyed this. I don't read poetry, but I really enjoyed it. It was such fun. Thank you. And please send us the other poems also.
Yeah,
I'll read them.
Sure. Yeah.
Thanks so much, Ashwin.
Thanks.
Wonderful session. Very expert and very observant. Thanks so much. You did so well.
Thank you,
Thank
Mandana.
A real
Thank you
joy.
always for your support.
Thanks, everyone.
Permits,
Thank
and
you.
if everybody,
Thank you, Ashwin.
can you hear me?
Angel, yeah.
Time permits, and if Ashwin has some more minutes, can we read the mammoth?
Sure, we can read. Yeah.
Your poem.
Yeah.
Yeah. If
people want to stay around for that.
Angel, before that, can you take a photo?
Yes. I think Sumit took a photo, but yeah, we can take it again. Sumit, are you there?
I'm outside right now. Can someone else take it?
Arun, can you?
I can take a screenshot if you all turn on your camera.
Ashwin's poem, is it?
No, please turn on your camera so that
I think we are taking a photo now.
Yeah.
We can probably read the poem after if you guys want to.
Kavita, Sarah, Neha.
Some of them are in office.
Oh, are they? Oh no.
Yeah.
Okay, Sini. It's all right. So I will go ahead and just a second, please.
I can't see you, or
oh, I'm just cannot do this today. I'm so sorry. I'm being a hypocrite. Just give me another 2 seconds, please. 1, 2, 3. Here we go. Done. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Arun. Thank you so much.
I'll screen share. Ashwin.
Wouldn't you like Ashwin to do his poem in a detailed way much later? Wouldn't you like Ashwin to do his poem for the next meeting in a detailed way? So just glancing over it, like hurrying over it?
Do you want me to do this in detail?
Yeah.
No, I think it's sufficient to just read through it.
Ashwin,
yeah.
I've drawn the mammoth. See?
Oh. On the
shape of your poem.
Yeah. Yeah. Shall I read it? Is it okay?
Yeah.
A woolly mammoth on the shore. He is at the beach this Sunday, watching the sand, wondering where the sea has gone. The tea vendors and the pickle sellers are gone too. The cross caw and wait to pick his bone cane off. He hears the sea over the din of kites fluttering in the branches, but still cannot see. He remembers the artist who once drew a portrait to be hung on his wall. He was posed as a thinker with a limb resting on his chin. He puts aside his orange-brown coat he bought from a foreign market at a bargain one winter on his way to a weekend fair. In his prime, he worked 20 hours a day some days and even gave up his rest days. Now he's relaxed, sits back, enjoys the sand and salt on his face, and he dreams of his tusks drenched in sea water.
Good one, Ashwin.
Thank you, Neha. So this was supposed to kind of lead off from the previous poems. So we like I had kind of tried to do something with the way that I have picked out these poems. First, we started with Orange, which is a very simple poem talking about the simple aspect of sharing something, which leads to a sense of happiness and which leads to some sort of a revelation about the self, some sort of a suffering that the self has gone through and come out of. And Good Bones also has that sort of a pattern, something very universal, which is a child and mother relationship, the kind of relationship that they share and the love that they share and the need for protection that arises from that love. And then we move on to a sort of a romantic love that is lost, destroyed, that we can see in After Years by Ted Kooser. That and how that can affect, how you can talk about that sort of an emotion that we all feel about that, but there are different ways in which you can talk about that sort of a lost sort of love. And to do that, you can use a technique like TED Courses, where you talk more about things around you, so that you know, to sandwich between everything that you feel about this particular instance. Or you can go the other way around, to bury your emotion inside the things about everything around you, which Eavan Boland does in her poem, The Atlantis. And then you have Lucille Clifton's poem, which is about love again, but love for oneself. The poem that I picked out, which is a love for oneself, how you develop a sense of affection and love and nurturing for yourself when the world around you is out to get you, kind of hell-bent on destroying you, how you can emerge out from it as some sort of like a horse from within that egg. How do you emerge from within that sort of an oppression? And Lucille Clifton is a fantastic poet. I highly recommend. And she uses the sonnet form again. And to call it a sonnet is elite, but it is still a very good poem, a very good sonnet in my estimation, which uses all things that needs to be used in a sonnet, in the sense of, not in the sense of form, but in the sense of the poem is entirely that of a sonnet that talks about time passing and love and kind of a global scope. That poem also has certain references or allusions, as we call in poetry, and I wanted to bring your attention to how you can use allusions referring to other things, to greater things, can kind of improve and enhance the way you write about yourself. For example, Atlantis talks about the Atlantis. Then you are forced to think about Plato. You are forced to think about Bacon and others who have talked about Atlantis and what the qualities of Atlantis is. Then when Lucille Clifton talks about Babylon, you are forced to think about what Babylon means to an individual who is not Christian. So or who is Christian, but who is treated by Christians while being Christian. So this on the basis of religion. So this kind of thoughts and expressions and exercises are enabled by this this elusiveness of poems. And then I wanted to bring to you the Only Yak in Batesville, Virginia. Yeah, if some of you have read the poem, it's an absolutely mind-blowing poem by Wendy Buchanan, The Only Yak in Batesville, Virginia. And when I did a course in poetry, this was the first poem we read. This was the first poem that our tutor walked into class with and handed to us and said, read the poem. And it just blew my mind wide open because it first of all, it shifts the perspective from human to the animal, human to the non-human, and how they see the world. But how do you use a speaker, a yak as a speaker of a poem, and talk about very essentially human feeling of loneliness? And that is what Wendy Buchanan succeeds very much in the poem, The Only Yak in Batesville, Virginia. And this another poet who uses this sort of technique of using non-human speakers in a poem to effectively talk about this is Arun Koladkar. If you are familiar with the Indian poet Arun Koladkar, especially in his Kala Ghoda poems, has the bicycle tire, an old bicycle tire, speaking about its experience and saying, like, I am at least hanging here. Like the bicycle tire is hanging from a rope in front of a cycle shop, I think. And no, it's being used by children to play. Yeah, the old bicycle tire is being, it says, I am so old, so worn out, still moving, right? Imagine yourself as old as I am, and you'd just be hanging from some guy's puncture shop. So you will be hanging limp from some guy's puncture shop. So this kind of personality being brought into inanimate objects. And you have The Pie Dog by Arun Koladkar, which is a magnificent book. A dog is...
There's one more Vamangi poem by Arun Koladkar.
Which one?
Vamangi.
I am not familiar with that one. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a stone god, lady stone god talking about Vittal. She's Rukmani's stone.
Okay.
Talking about Vittal.
Vittal. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And he writes about Yashwant Rao, right? Yashwant Rao. But it is not from the perspective of Yashwant Rao, but he talks about Yashwant Rao. The speaker of the poem speaks about Yashwant Rao, who is also kind of a stone god. And Arun Koladkar has this magnificent way of shifting the human consciousness into other, or assuming the consciousness of other things or creatures. And it's a great way of talking about the world around us, a different way of talking about the world around us, something that you call defamiliarization, defamiliarizing yourself from something that is so common, so something so mundane, something so everyday. And you also defamiliarize language. You also brings a distance to the language. For example, there is somebody who writes poems about everyday things from the perspective of an alien who has visited the earth. So the alien has a different word for everything that we see every day, we use every day. He calls dreams moving books or something, and he calls books capstans and not books. So like in that sense, he's talking about something very familiar, something that we use every day, but is using terms that are different, defamiliarizing us from the world that we experience and we live. And that, in my estimation, that is what poetry should be able to do. To let us look at the world around us in a way that we would usually not. But at the same time, make us feel like, oh, that feels familiar. that is something I have experienced. That is a thought I have had, or that is a feeling I have had. Something familiar, at the same time, something strange. If you can achieve both of that together, I think a poem succeeds. If it can be as perfect as an egg and as dynamic as a horse, at the same time, one inside the other, then the poem succeeds, I think. And with that, I think I should shut up. Thank you so much.
Wow. Thank you so much. We enjoyed it. I enjoyed it so
Really
much.
beautiful. Very nice. Good fun. Thank you. Hope to see you again.
Thank you, Ashwin.
Arun?
Yes, Ashwin.
Hi.
Ashwin, when Kinjal told us that you would be coming, we were just delighted, and I personally was too, simply because I've been following you for a long period of time on Facebook, and then during the session, and beyond the subjective experience of poetry, you gave us something very concrete to hold on to. Say, for example, this idea of a sandwich, how the poem could be made that way, or of course an enjambment and what's m dash hyphen, and then and especially, I will never forget this, that the fable makers and the most ancient fable maker is Plato. So these are all concrete concepts or piece of information which is absolutely important. And for that, I will always cherish this session. And I think I say it on behalf of everybody present in this session. It's a wonderful session. Please come back again and again and again. And if possible, please be part of this community too. This community is not too bad.
Thank you so much, Arun. You guys are very, very kind. Thank you.
Actually, Ashwin, do you have a channel where you discuss poems regularly? Because I could go on.
No, I